What's up, guys? It's your Vincent Valentine EX Turk with another Final Fantasy topic, mainly Final Fantasy VII. And this has been, I've been wanting to talk about this for a long time, for how many arguments and debates I got over this, but it's about the Final Fantasy VII series. This is where, and I'm gonna let you know, you could go ahead and dislike and whatever, and disagree, dispute this if you want, but I'm gonna tell you why I liked the Final Fantasy VII completion. The completion. Now, we're not going to discuss Advent Children because it's a movie, even though it's part of the completion. It's still a movie at the end of the day. This is we're talking about the video games, the games, you know. So we're leaving Advent Children out of this and Before Crisis out of this because Before Crisis was a mobile game. We're going to be focusing on Crisis Core and Dirge of Cerberus, and not only why I like the games, but why it fits in the series very well. Alright? And again, this is a very controversial topic, so if I get some unsubs and dislikes, I'm not really going to be surprised about this. Because, again, this is the thing that this is one of the big things that the Final Fantasy community fights about, which, again, it's just like Final Fantasy 13. It's just something that is controversial to the fan base and the communities, but here's why I like it, and here's why the Final Fantasy VII completion fits in perfectly with the original Final Fantasy VII. Yes, this will include the new characters. Okay, like Crisis. Okay, starting with the very first of the completion, and not by release date. This is gonna be by chronological storyline. And the chronological storyline, I like Crisis Core because it put Zack's story, because Zack was only a fan-fiction character. He was only a fan-favorite character that had a little bit of fan-fiction-y moments in the original game, because that's who Cloud got his Buster Sword from. You actually get to play through when Zack was, not only when he was in First Class Soldier, but before when he was in Second Class Soldier, and he got the Buster all the way when he got the Buster Sword from Angeal, which is a better story than just Zack handing Cloud the Buster Sword. Because the story was a lot better that way. That way you saw the Buster Sword was passed down. That there was something special about the Buster Sword in the beginning of the game. So I like that they added that, where Zack was trained by Angeal, and Angeal gave his Buster Sword to Zack before he died, and it makes so much sense to the thing. Now, another thing in Crisis Core, people hated this, but I love this. The character Genesis. The character that was drawn and designed by the Japanese pop star Gakt, you know, from Dirge of Cerberus. But we're not talking about Dirge of Cerberus right now, but that's where he's originally designed from, you know. Since Genesis didn't get put in Dirge of Cerberus in the full game, you know, besides a select secret ending, you know, got to use his character in Crisis Core, but it was in the way. I mean, it was in the way that it was good, and filled in the spots before, like when Sephiroth ended up betraying, you know, Soldier and burning down Nibelheim. You know, it added more of a cause to why Sephiroth has done that, because it's not just only the stuff he reads, because Sephiroth being angry and frustrated at the whole world for lying to him, Genesis actually, you know, put a little bit of spoon-fed, you know, telling him this is what the world is, this is what society is, and, you know, that's why Sephiroth went bad, which played it perfectly. I mean, you're not going to see in the Final Fantasy VII Remake, possibly, but, you know, about that scene, but not only just with select scenes, but it was in a way where Genesis did not actually infringe upon the original story, because, you know, after the whole Nibelheim incident, Zack, you know, had to go find Genesis and put a stop to him. But since it made more sense, because since Cloud was affected by Mako poisoning, Cloud wasn't awake at the time, so, you know, it could be 100% possible that this happened within the Final Fantasy VII timeline, because Cloud wouldn't remember who Genesis was, because he was knocked out by the Mako poisoning. So it is played out so well it's played out so well for the character Genesis to be part of the completion without affecting the original story, because Cloud didn't get to see who Genesis was, which, you know, is really good. It played out really well because he was knocked out, so he couldn't remember it. It did happen, but he couldn't remember it, so, you know, it didn't affect the story that bad. And then when Genesis got defeated, he was taken down to deep ground, you know, by Vice and Nero, which was better that happened, because that way it would make sense to the original story, because nobody knows where Genesis is at the original story, not even Shinra. So it was good that he got put in a cave, you know, and spent his years slumbering until the end of Dirge of Cerberus. That way, it would affect the Dirge of Cerberus part of the timeline, but it wouldn't affect the original timeline. All the stuff that could happen in the original Final Fantasy VII game could happen. That stuff could happen. That stuff could very well happen. So, it's kind of a good thing. You know, I like that they put that new character in without affecting or tampering with the original game, which is really, really good. Which is really, really good, to be honest. You know, and it also fit in with the story really well, so that was good. Again, I talked about Angeal, and then, you know, Crisis Core was good because without all the Genesis and Angeal story arcs in there, or the Wutai War story arc, Crisis Core played out just like the flashbacks in Final Fantasy VII. So you pretty much got a full game of everything that happened beforehand. Which, if you don't know, Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core is actually the prequel of the original title that you can actually play on the PSP. Hopefully they make an HD collection, because I would love to play that game, you know. But it fit in, I liked it, and it fit in very well. Now, we're not counting Advent Children because it's a movie, and we're not counting Before Crisis because Before Crisis was a cell phone game. So, we're going to skip years and years and years down the timeline. Now, let's talk about Final Fantasy VII Dirge of Cerberus. Or should I correctly call it the Final Fantasy VII Vincent Valentine, because this was his game. This was his game where he's the main character in this one. But it played out very well without negatively affecting Final Fantasy VII. It showed you the truth of what happened. Like, it showed, you know, because if you didn't know, Vincent Valentine was engaged to a woman, which the woman was Sephiroth's mother, so real mother. So it played out very good in the flashbacks of how that happened, and it had the same scene, but the difference is it was the CGI. The CGI was much better in Dirge of Cerberus, but it had the same exact scene as Final Fantasy VII when you go back to Vincent's flashback. So it played, again, it mills right into the storyline really perfectly. And of course, this being a sequel, it already makes sense. It already mills in good just because it's a sequel. Just because, you know, it could happen right after, which it did. It could happen. And same thing with Deep Ground, since Deep Ground stayed underground and until Meteor hit. When Meteor in Final Fantasy VII hit Midgar, it destroyed Shinra, and Shinra was the only thing holding Deep Ground down. But since that, you know, place is destroyed, it would make sense for Deep Ground to rise in the Dirge of Cerberus sequel. So it plays out very good. It plays out wonderfully. And even if it didn't have all that, it's still, the fact that it's a sequel, it plays out a lot better. You know, because if you actually play Dirge of Cerberus, you know, the characters do talk about what happened in the previous Final Fantasy VII original game. So it plays out perfectly for the fact that it's a sequel already, even without all the extra stuff. And it put in the Crisis Core thing where you see Genesis at the end of the game if you did some special stuff, but that's not the point. The point is, these games make sense to me. It puts in the holes that Final Fantasy VII have put in, because Final Fantasy VII, let's be honest, it's a great game. We all love it. Most of our childhoods were spent on it. But the game had holes. The game had holes in it. It had plot holes that need to be filled in. It has so many holes, you try to put a shovel in those holes, you're going to break your shovel. So the Crisis Core and Dirge of Cerberus parts of the completion, the sequel and prequel, made sense a lot better. And if you actually played in sequential order, everything that happened in the original game makes tons and tons of sense. It makes a lot of sense. It's like, it's equivalent to watching the live-action X-Men movies, but when you put the Wolverine movies, it makes sense. And it's done in a way where it does not hurt the original storyline. Which, again, the problem I have with the fan base is that people don't like the completion to Final Fantasy VII because they think it ruins the original. Because anything that touches the original, they're kind of like the whole Star Wars fan base when it came to the prequels. Don't want nothing touching the sacred original classics. But I think it's beautiful because, to add on to a classic, to make more onto a classic. You could take almost any story from anywhere and anything that's already original and stuff like that, and add on to it, it will make sense and it makes better. Whether you go back in the past and have a prequel that directly ties within the game, or within the subject material, or if you do things right after, it'd make it much better. But I'm running over time, so the point I'm trying to say is the Final Fantasy VII Completion plays a special place in my heart, and it makes the original game have more deeper storytelling. Like when I play sequential, chronological order story, everything starts to make sense, and you know what? It makes me like the original game even a little bit better than I did before, because then everything makes sense. And once you play all of that in one, it makes better. Even with the new characters, it makes it a lot better of a story. It makes me captivated. It keeps me on my toes, and it's just a better story than it originally was. Not to say the original was a bad story. It just didn't have. It had too many plot holes, and too many characters were introduced. These two games alone, without having children movie, without the cell phone before Crisis game, already makes the story make a lot of sense. But the point I'm trying to say is that, yes, this is reasons why I like the Final Fantasy VII Completion. The whole entire extended timeline. And since I'm running over time, I'm going to go ahead and, end it with, yes, it makes sense with the storylines, and it does not tamper with the original, which makes it the best things ever. So, with that, I'm going to end it with May the Crystal be with you. Have a good day. Be safe out there. And like and subscribe, which you will see in the other part of the screen. To the darkest